I'll be here talking about summary, which is a Portuguese practice focused on prefab and modular architecture. And today I will show some of our works, let's say some of our projects and as an architectural practice, and also some previews on a virtual exhibition we developed based in these same topics. So about our point, let's say our manifesto, in few words, we aim the optimization of time and physical resources in architecture through prefabricated solutions. So it was the challenge we chose to make the construction act an increasingly simple process. And we choose this challenge based on two facts. The first fact, people who need a place to live and to stay are moving around faster in global terms, particularly moving toward the cities. Now we have around 3 billion people living in the cities. By 2013, we'll have around 5 billion, 2 of them under the poverty line. So it is the first time in history that we face this brutal increase in such a short period. It means that we'll need to define strategies to accommodate this population faster than ever. Otherwise, a lot of cities will just collapse. Otherwise, architecture is not taking a relevant role in this process. Second fact, in the extreme opposite point, let's say, there's a growing need for immediacy from this global and accelerated society, which every day uses products and services from these companies. So I'm quite sure there isn't a single person in the audience who haven't used at least once one of these companies. And it pictures, let's say, this global demanding for affordable rapidity. So I would say that these two worldwide facts, the people moving toward the cities and the growing need for immediacy, they seem to be unrelated, but there's something in common. They both set up a call for pragmatism, and they both place the same challenge to architecture, which is the time and physical resources optimization. And from the very beginning, we knew that it would be our focus. That's why we are so obsessed with standardization, with prefabricated and modular architecture. But I would say that besides these two worldwide facts, there's also our personal experience, our empiric perception. And it was Portugal in 2015, the year we created the studio, so 5 years ago. And it was a post-crisis country with lack of money, very few public investment, and quite limited resources. So this resources optimization sense was not just a choice, but also a need in a country like Portugal. So we just worked with the context we found. And our first project shows it quite well. So in this same year, 2015, a Portuguese concrete company specialized in prefab and offsite construction commissioned us to develop a new building system that should be cheap and easy to produce, to transport, and to assemble. This was our answer. We call it the Gomos system. Gomos is the Portuguese word meaning the slice of the orange fruit. And we created this modular system based on concrete units, these concrete rings, and we designed them with them, not just the system itself, but also the industrial procedure to make it possible. And that's how it works. So this is our prototype, our first experience with this system. So during the first day, we just built this foundation slab with this concrete with special components to dry within 15 hours. So during the second day, we started the transportation of the modules. As we can see, the building is ready in the factory, including all the electricity components, all the fixed furniture pieces, also the insulation layer. So during the third day, all the modules are in the building site, and we just need to place them and to connect them. So this process takes 3 months on factory. It took us 3 days on site to mount the building within a period 6 times faster than our country's building rate average, not compromising its constructive or structural quality. So this is what we mean when we talk about optimization. So these are some photos of this prototype. It has like a special taste for us as our first building experience. And of course, it helped us to materialize our approach. Anyway, it's important to remark that we didn't just invent this. We took the idea of the old sewer pipes normally used for the water drainage, and we just redesigned it in order to make it habitable. So I would say that these sewer pipes modules and this GOMO system, they are quite different in use, but they are quite the same in structural or constructive terms. That's why I love this sentence from Jonathan Keats for Forbes magazine. This project shows how the most readily available solutions are often so commonplace as to be practically invisible. So sometimes our function as architects is not just about to invent, but also to unveil these hidden solutions. And it takes us to the Venice Biennale 2016. It was this idea of transposition from an infrastructural system to an architectural system that we are invited to show in the Venice Biennale. This is our installation called Infrastructure Structure Architecture, and the idea was to make straight clear what was the concept and what was the result behind this building system. So we wanted to show how these pieces are brutally different in shape, they are brutally different in use, but they are quite the same in constructive terms. And reinforcing this idea of transposition, of reinventing, here's a project 70 years older than ours, using the same concept. I mean, structural slices fully ready from the factory. They use steel, we use concrete, but the concept is quite similar. And another case, this is the zip-up house from Richard Rogers. Again, is not innovation at all. It is all about reprocessing and adapting existing solutions. And the history of prefabricated architecture is being built with cases like that. I mean, similar solutions being applied by different architect, solutions that failed, and then sometimes decades later they are copied or recovered by someone else. And after the Venice Biennale, we got some commissions to develop several works with our GOMO system. This is one of them, is mixing tourism and housing. So the client came to us because of this hilly terrain with this kind of topography. It would be almost impossible and also very expensive to assemble these construction yards for the traditional building. That's why he wanted our modular system. At the very first moment, the commission would be to distribute several rooms over the hillside. We propose this, not rooms, but small houses, so that some of them are able to work as full-time houses and not as tourism units. So mixing these two programs, I mean, tourism and housing. We guarantee that this complex will not have a seasonal use. It will be used the whole year and not just during the vacation period. And frequent use normally means frequent maintenance and frequent security of the area. So the client understood and accepted this suggestion. And we also took this project as an opportunity to start a new experience with this system. So in order to optimize even more the production, in this case, we try to concentrate all the technical installations, I mean the water, the electricity, and the climatization in just one module. And we bring it to the other parts of the house externally. So this technical module requires more specifications to be produced, but the rest can be produced automatically with very little man intervention, taking half of the time comparing to the others. And the next step was the placing of these units over the hillside. It seems quite random, but it is mainly related with the ground pressure. So due to this terrain rugged topography, it will be difficult to build these normal foundation slabs. So with the geotechnical test, we just determined the parts with the best ground pressure. They are marked in blue in this image. So within those areas, the natural ground is strong enough to install each unit directly. I mean, without any foundation slab. And of course, it is easier, cheaper, and also less abrasive for the natural soil. And then within those blue areas, we tested different, different positions and different orientations. The goal was to place the units as separated as possible to guarantee the privacy of each one, combining it with specific orientations to avoid visual barriers. So it looks like a Tetris game until we get to this. At this point, each unit has a view for the landscape and for the river, and these modules are currently under production. Some of them are already being assembled. And this is another project using, again, the same system. This time it is a mixed-use building with an upper floor with 6 small apartments for low-cost renting and a multifunctional space in the ground floor in, let's say, direct contact with the public area. So we try to take this multifunctionality to the limit. So all the partitions in this ground floor are done with these removable panels. So we can create new compartments, or we can leave the whole floor to work as a very big open space. So this area is changeable over time according to the program at hand. All the structure is offsite, made out of prefabricated concrete. It is produced and stored in factory. And then when it's the right moment, we just assemble it, I mean, in the building site in a very quick and clean way. So we use this panel system in the ground floor, similar to the Soviet systems. and the GOMO system in the upper floor, both with the insulation inside the walls. These are some videos from the building assembly process. And now the final photos, it is our latest project, so it is still quite fresh for us. As you can see, this frontal facade facing the public space is quite open. The back facade, the entrance for the houses, is more closed, more private. And as you can see, we assume these structural walls without any finishing. So we have prefab concrete visible from the interior and also from the exterior. So the point is to reduce the arts and the manpower involved in this construction process, and with that we reduce also the building time, I mean the time that we have the building under construction, and we reduce also its costs. Okay, now we are exploring new ways and new shapes to use these concrete pieces to build modular structures. This is one of them, a commission from the Maxi Museum in Rome. So they commissioned 5 studios to develop an idea for a temporary installation to be in the external part of the Maxi Museum for roughly 4 months to host some activities during the summer. This was our proposal to transform this temporary installation into a permanent building. I mean, the same pieces used during the installation could be reused later to assemble a permanent building. Our proposal as an installation was kind of concrete pergola functioning as a temporary and shaded external space to host their activities. The formal appearance of this installation corresponds to what it really is. I mean, a provisory stage of a few concrete pieces that would become a building soon. Actually, it does look almost as a building site. And using these same pieces, it will be possible to raise this permanent building, somehow recycling the energy, the effort, and also the money and the material that we used previously in this temporary installation. And another case, this is for the Gonçalves Museum Foundation in Portugal. This foundation promoted a competition for a modular and itinerant pavilion to host their art exhibitions in different locations. So it should be flexible and it could assume different dimensions from 200 to 600 square meters, needing to be repeatedly assembled, disassembled, and stored. So we defined 2 main principles to design this project. The first one is to guarantee the structural resistance of the pavilion after several assemblies. And the second one was to find the cheapest solution for the pavilion storage. When the pavilion is not in use, it shouldn't represent any cost. So, to ensure this structural resistance, instead of inventing or trying to invent a new modular building system, which would be not verified and not tested, we just reused again an existing system. So it is the same strategy we used before with the GOMOs, but in this case with a different shape. Here we divided, each one of these models is divided in 2 pieces. So we have a base and then we have a top. With this we also divide the weight, making it's simpler to assemble and to transport. And this is a proposed solution. All these pieces are to be produced in-site. I'm sorry, are to be produced off-site and just assembled in-site. And the final building can vary in terms of dimensions simply by adding or removing these modules. And finally, about the storage, we propose these modules to have different sizes, allowing them to be stored inside each other, let's say as a matryoshka concept, occupying a reduced space, and considering these rough composition of the modules. They are mainly made out of concrete. They are able to be stored anywhere, including in the exterior, not needing a warehouse. We said they could just store it in the gardens of the foundation, so reducing the storage costs to zero. We got selected in the first stage of this competition, and we are among the 3 shortlisted projects and waiting for the final decision. Okay, I'm almost finishing here, but let's go back to the beginning of this talk. These 2 facts, I mean, the increasing of the global urban population and this growing need for immediacy, they are changing the world, and they certainly demand for rapid and more efficient architecture. And in generic terms, these requirements are also the main struggles of off-site and prefab architecture. However, I would say that most of off-site attempts failed, as they don't reach the expected rapidity or affordability. Here we have Walter Gropius and Konrad Watchman developing this project, the package house. Even being 2 geniuses of the last century architecture, they didn't reach the expected stability, and it was not a success in commercial terms. Actually, it was a failure. So we created a virtual exhibition to show some of these examples that are important, building the history of prefabricated and off-site architecture, even if they were not a success in commercial terms. Okay, with this focus on the failure, maybe the exhibition should not be called the Reasons Offsite. We should be calling these the reasons. What are the reasons for this imminent fail of off-site architecture? And of course, with this virtual exhibition, we don't intend to give a permanent answer to such a complicated question, but we prefer to collect some examples and to collect some knowledge to help the audience to build their own answer. And this is how it works. It is a collection of buildings and building systems that we consider it significant in this historical evolution of off-site architecture. So the goal is to create this radiography of the different stages of this evolution. And we present the classical triptych of any architectural exhibition, let's say models, texts, and photos, but we do it in a virtual environment. So it is almost an immaterial exhibition. And I'm finishing here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Samuel. I'm just going to stop your screen sharing.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you. If you do have any questions, please put them in the chat for Samuel. But I'll just kick off quickly. I think that what I noticed throughout the projects that you showed is kind of a really strong visual language that runs through all of them. How do you stop the construction process, as in the prefabrication, from directing the look of the architecture? Do you find that that's the directing force?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's a very good question. I think when you work so close to prefabrication, I think it creates kind of an inversion in the way you think and you create architecture, which is normally, let's say that normally we tend to think about the results, the final building, and then we start thinking how to build it, you know, how is the process to make it possible. And when we work with prefabrication, it happens in the inverse way. I mean, first, you need to know your limitations. First, you need to know how are the pieces, how are the dimensions and these models, how you will transport them, and just then you can think about the final result. So sometimes I would say that the result itself is a consequence, a very direct consequence of the industrial process of production of the models production, you know. So I would say that in this case, first we have the production, the technical limitations, and just then we have the building appearance.
And also I noticed that a lot of the projects are all at a low density, kind of low scale. But you mentioned at the start about a rise in population and prefabrication being the answer to that. Have you been building projects at like a higher density as well? Mm-hmm. Have you experimented?
I mean, not at the moment. We are starting a new project with a different kind of density, and we'll see what happens next. A few days ago, I just reached an investigation saying that 60% of the work made for architects never leaves the paper. So we are working with in some new projects with a different density. Anyway, I don't know if it will be built or not, but I mean, we are always connected to the commission, right? So in this case, it doesn't matter what is the concept you want to follow. It doesn't matter your capacity. If the commission is low density buildings, you'll do low density buildings. Anyway, I think that it is not that different to what I said before, because at the same time we have more and more people living in the cities, but the density in the cities is going down because its footprint is enlarging a lot. So I'm saying that the future is urban, but I'm not saying that the future will be necessarily related with a very big concentration in specific spots. I mean, I guess that this spreading of the urban field is something that our buildings are quite related to.
Ellis has got a question. So.
Thank you, Samuel. I wondered about the use of concrete. And there's obviously a move away from concrete on the grounds that it's high in embodied carbon. And are you looking at other kinds of technologies? They're looking at timber, kind of prefabricated timber construction.
Okay. So, first of all, I need to agree with you. I mean, concrete at this moment is horrible. Not for the concrete itself, but for the cement. I mean, the cement is the most damaging industry in the world. all the pollution produced by the cement industry is 6 times higher than all the commercial flights in the world. So this is actually a problem, but it is still the construction material and the construction method that is more common in the world from the last 100 years, right? And with that, I believe that our path should be to make this material better and not to try to eliminate it. And we have a lot of investigation being done in this specific field. Their goal is specifically to switch the cement for some other materials doing the same function, such as recycled material. And I believe, and I hope that these investigations will reach to a conclusion. Anyway, I think it is the only solution we have, because as I said before, we'll have more, and I mean, the demand is always higher. We'll have more and more people looking for buildings. And the most part of these people and the most part of these cities where the population is increasing a lot, they will not have other option besides concrete. They will not have the conditions that most of the Nordic European countries have to choose the best structural materials also in terms of ecology. No, they will build with something that is cheaper and easier for them. So if we want to be serious about these questions, we really need to assume that we need to improve the material, we need to improve concrete, and will not be able to block the concrete spread. It will happen anyway.
I also had a question about the exhibition that you, I wondered if, was that in response to COVID that you had to turn it from physical to a virtual exhibition, or was it always going to be virtual?
That's a good question. No, it was, I mean, it was not related with COVID. Actually, we did like a reduced version of this exhibition, which is a purely online exhibition. But I mean, the virtuality in this case, we choose it as a means to show this exhibition in a very simple way. So every time that we need to show this exhibition abroad, everything we need to ship is just a box with a computer and a pair of this Oculus Rift, the 3D Oculus Rift, and some sensors. So the whole exhibition is, you know, my luggage. We show here 25 buildings with 25 models, 25 panels. So if we needed to show this exhibition in a physical way, we would need to ship at least 25 boxes instead of one. That's why we choose this medium. Actually, talking about COVID, this is something that we are facing right now, and this exhibition makes you to put this Oculus Rift in your head. So I guess that before we have a vaccine, maybe this exhibition will not be able to be on display again.
I guess unless you mean because of like crossing.
I don't know. I can show you. These are the Oculus.
Be able to share.
You know, we have this part with sponge here. So I think it will be quite difficult to ensure the cleaning process from one person to another.
That's a consideration for virtual exhibition. I thought it was a really successful way of presenting the exhibition. Like I've seen a few virtual ones recently because of COVID, and I think maybe because of the rush from converting them from physical to virtual, they're not as successful. But yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. I think we'll wrap up now, unless you have any final words.
No, I mean, I would just like to thank you for this opportunity to show my work here in the 100 Day Studio. And come on, it was quite nice to talk with you about this work we have been done. And someday I hope to find opportunity to show this exhibition also in London.